Well, welcome back to a new episode of the Win More, Live Better podcast. And for those of you that have been tuning in, I'm bringing you a new coaching guest today. I'm really excited. This has been one that has been on the radar for a while. I had actually heard him in another podcast, the Coaching Crossover podcast. And as I was listening to some of his answers, you just kind of start to pick up on some things from some people where you're like, man, there's more depth there. There's more insights that I would really love to extrapolate and kind of dive into. And so, really, more than anything, I'm just excited to bring you today the head men's soccer coach at Wake Forest University, Coach Bobby Muuss. So, Bobby, I just want to first off, I'm mindful of the life of a Division I head coach. There
Yeah.
is no off season, there is no down period. Oftentimes, there's always something on your plate. So, the fact that you're doing this means a great deal. So, thank you.
Well, I appreciate it and appreciate the compliments. I'm glad you enjoyed the podcast, and I'm excited to see what we can ponder up here today.
Yeah, yeah. When I was kind of diving more into your coaching journey, I was like, man, there were some really good, I think, unique and interesting threads that we could start with, and I think one being, you started at Wake Forest back in 2015, and so you've got some. I can only imagine how that has evolved, how you have evolved over the last 10 years, which I think we'll get into, but. I'm also mindful that when you took over that program, it was a program that had already had a really rich history, like a championship kind of history, and
hmm
I'm mindful of how that can also create its own set of challenges as you take over a program to build off of that and also put your own maybe authentic and unique fingerprint on it. So I would just love to know as a starting point what that experience was like, how you kind of approached that, and what were maybe some of the challenges alongside that as well for you.
Well, I mean, challenges is a really good word, but like exciting challenges. There was excitement about coming to Wake Forest. Obviously, I have a great relationship with the former head coach, Coach Jay Vidovich, and what he's built and that tradition. And you want to try to hold on to as much of that tradition as you possibly can, but then putting your own twist or your own hands in it, right? I know. A little side story for you too, Zach, is I was an assistant at Wake Forest under Jay prior to going to the University of Denver. So obviously, as we know in college athletics, it's always changing. But for the most part, is I had a good feeling for the tradition at Wake Forest, the alumni at Wake Forest, the community and the importance of the community at Wake Forest, the relationships that the players have with each other, generational relationships. It's a very unique program that way. So those were things I was super cautious and knowing that culture that I mean, I felt I had a little hand in it in the 6 years that I was here prior to building it where it is, and just paying homage to all those people prior to me, coaches, players, and I wouldn't say tiptoeing into the position, but making sure that I did it in a mindful way. Um, it was, I remember a year before I accepted a job at Wake Forest, I told Jay, Coach Vidovich, that I didn't want the job. And then so when it did open, like if he ever left, we were like fooling around because he was tinkering maybe with some professional opportunities at the time. And he's like, well, why don't you want the job? And I'm like, well, because I don't want to be the one to mess it up. I want to be the one that comes back and fixes it right after someone else messes it up. So because building is easier than maintaining or trying to excel. So when the job came open, he was like, I thought you didn't want it. I'm like, well, how do you say no, right? Really, when it opens. I remember having my first player meeting when I got into Wake with Ian Harkes, and Ian is a legendary player at Wake Forest, won the Herman Trophy, still playing in San Jose now. And he goes, you mentioned in the team meeting that it's going to be different. How is it going to be different? And I looked him right in the eyes and said, I don't know. To be, and I just know I'm not Coach Jay. And I knew, I learned as a young head coach when I got to the University of Denver. I had two very good people in my life, at Coach Ray Reed at UConn and Jay Vidovich at Wake Forest. And then when I went to go on to be a head coach, I tried to be both of them and me. And I was not successful at that, managing players, ups and downs where I just wasn't really putting my fingerprint. I was trying to be someone I wasn't. So I knew that was extremely important to me when I got to Wake. Is I know I'm not Jay. I don't, I mean, I'd love to have his knowledge, but I know I'm not him, and I have to do it my way and try to combine all those things that I've learned in the past to to make a foundation forward. If it's our core values, not just replicating what Jay had, right? With the way we do things, if it's pregame, if it's postgame. But I did want to play respect to the traditions and everything that's been gone that I feel like I was a part of as well. So I think staff is extremely important, right? Making sure that you have people that are on the same page with you and have the same vision. And then you meet with every player, right? And with any change, there's some turnover and there's some changes in personnel. But the stress, I remember my first, it was with the Student Athletic Advisory Council, no committee. No, it wasn't student. It was the teachers. And I sat down and they introduced me. And a guy came over to me and he goes, "How does it feel to be replacing the winningest coach in Wake Forest history?" And I'm like, "Nice to meet you too, big guy." And I do like this. I tell people all the time, like we're in our spring season now, and I think we're 1-1, right? And I told people we were 3-3 at the end of my first spring here. And I remember calling my wife at the time. I said, "Stop packing. I may be coming back." So it wasn't easy. But that fall, I think we went 19-2 or something like that, lost in the quarterfinals. So it's it was a pretty special year, difficult but special.
I want to get into more of that here in a moment, but I think one thing that you described that I've definitely heard and I've seen with a lot of coaches that I've been around is there is that adjustment when you become a head coach or as you step into coaching, like sometimes like the only thing we know is who we've seen and who
Mm-hmm.
we've been mentored
100%.
by, and
Yeah.
like there's value in that. There's so many lessons and things that you can draw and pull from those individuals that have been mentors and guides, and yet as you described it, it maybe took a bit for you to then find your own authentic. What did that shift look like for you? Or what kind of helped you? Or at what point did you start to realize like, okay, like I need to start to find or create my own authentic way of leading?
I think it's two is number one, I tried to be, coming from Wake, I did feel, and it sounds arrogant, but I did feel I was one of the better people at what I did in recruiting, at the level that we were at, right? Like when I left Wake, we had the number one recruiting class in the country and they went on to win national championship, not because of that, but just great players, right? And I think so I tried to do all the recruiting, not all of it, but then I was the one that was doing a little bit more of the selling, right? And then when the kids come in, then that you're trying to be their confidant, but you're also the disciplinarian and the one that's holding them accountable and the one making decisions. And it's very different, like being an assistant coach where guys come to you and I would support my bosses back 100%. But you're trying to do both. And I think that's confusing for a young man, and I didn't deal with that well. I would tell you right now, if the players in my early days or even mid days at Denver, they probably look at my success now and are like shaking their heads, like, "What's going on?" Right? But I did evolve. I have to give a lot of credit. Is some of the things that hit me the most is bad years, right? I mean, we had some inconsistencies where when I first got there, it was pretty easy. And I say easy is like I said, is to turn a corner is easy. We won. We tied for the regular season championship the first year, didn't get in the NCAA tournament. The next year we win it, we get in the NCAA tournament for the first Division I NCAA tournament program history. And you're like, "Oh, this is great." And then next year you go 5-10, right? And then you go on a good run, you win the conference tournament again, you get in the tournament, and we went 5-11. And those inconsistencies had a lot to do with you bringing players in early on, really shaping. We had a top 20 recruiting class my first year at Denver. And then some of those guys in year three aren't playing as much because you're recruiting. I'm not going to say better, but fresher, and they had the mentality as the program was evolving, and that was hard, right? And I've never dealt with that before, and I think you learn from that. I had a someone that was friends with my boss, right, and a fan of Wake. Sorry, I'm going to get universities. University of Denver, and an alumni there. His name's Josh Broderick. And Josh was, he did like major company consulting. He still does it now. And he'll reach out to me every so often. And he says, "I'd love to sit down with you." And first off, you're like, "I don't want to do it." But I was like, I was in need. And really, we went through like a deep dive on staff, myself, what works, what doesn't work. And then I put it down. like my goals, my ambitions, the standards, the expectations, and basically made a book that we presented to the team. And it's even, and I remember Ron Graham at University of Denver looking through it, and he goes, "You have all these expectations for yourself, like for the team. What's the expectations for you?" And that hit me, and I was like, "That's pretty cool." So putting yourself out there, right, a little bit vulnerable is like, "Hey, if we're not meeting these, you can call me out on this." And then as I evolved, and now I'm at Wake Forest, and I tell guys all the time, if you feel I'm not meeting the expectations, you have to tell me. You have a voice, right? This is your career too. So I think that document, those meetings, and putting yourself out there, and then even when you're recruiting, this is the expectation, right? It's really, really high accountability, high structure. And there's a lot of student athletes like, "I want that, I want that, I want that." And then when they get here, like, "Whoa, I didn't expect it." "Why didn't you expect it? We went over this." So it's a little bit more black and white, I guess. Even if it's kid doesn't do his study hall and he misses 2 minutes, he doesn't play on the weekend. I didn't do that. I didn't suspend him. He suspended himself when he decided to take a shortcut, because in the end, that's gonna cost you in life. It's gonna cost you on the field. And my ultimate goal right now is, yes, we want to win championships, but we want to use the game to teach kids life lessons, right, and prepare them for the future. And here I'm a 50-year-old man now, and life is not easy. Every time you think you turn a page, you know what I mean? Like the wind blows and you lost your page and you're starting all over again. So that's a little bit more about like my journey.
There's a thought I had recently where, and I've shared this with some of the coaches that I now kind of work with in one-on-one partnerships, and the idea that like no one would ever renovate their home while it's on fire. And the point being, what you would generally want to do is build your foundation before a crisis, before, failure, before you reach a point where you become, burnout or exhausted. And I think hearing you describe what, in essence, that document represented, I don't know if this is how you would necessarily define it, is it sounds like it gave you a really solid foundation to be
Yeah.
anchored to as a coach, and a guide for how you wanted to show up, how you wanted to lead. And I wanted to just expand just for a moment on that. And what do you feel like changed for you once you put that, those thoughts to paper and you had that declared, that book? What changed for you, or what did you gain from that that maybe you didn't have prior to?
Well, also, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up two other things that, like, along with that come in that same time is, and my guys know too, and I never, you know, is, my relationship with the Lord grew. I didn't have one. And I thought my faith grew in that, where I spent more time learning and learning about myself and that relationship. And I think that's been a pillar now of my life and the way I want to raise my children. And I'll use, faith-based lessons with conversations with my players. And I look at it as, does not matter if you believe, what religion you are, if you have a religion, whatever it may be, it's life lessons, right? And just being a good person. And I think that has paid a large, I have a lot more empathy in what I do and understanding and grace, because I know I'm given a ton. And the other thing is just my, taking time for myself and working out and trying to at least clear my mind. I had a really, really good, friend and partner in Eric Johnson, which is the former head coach at the University of Denver and Boston College. Now he's the, associate head coach or assistant at Fairfield women's basketball, where we were both going through a difficult time at the same time. And that relationship, I think, really grounded me as well. So between meeting and understanding that I needed to make some changes, giving my life to Christ, and becoming stronger in my faith, and then just worried about me. I think that's a big piece of it as well. It's not just one book and just say, "Hey, here." You also, when you have bad years and you have players that you think you have a really good relationship with, and you find out maybe you don't have a really good relationship with them for one way or the other, that's humbling, right? So if that's the case, then we really have to evaluate how intentional those relationships are, and how are we getting more out of that relationship. Because even nowadays, it's really hard, right? Seeing what's going on in college athletics versus what I believe in and what I want to do, right? I literally was on my walk, I told you, and I texted a kid that I've been pretty hard on over the last couple of weeks. And he came in the office before we left and we met, and he says, I forgot these last 2 weeks how much you care about me. And it was hard. And I was really mad. And I texted him. I said, hey, and we got it out. And I said, don't ever question that I care about you, right? No matter how hard I am on you. I said, because sometimes it's extremely frustrating knowing the talent that you have that I'm failing. That frustration is at me, right? In a lot of ways that I'm failing getting it out of you. So don't ever do that again, right? Not in a bad way. But I say that because you have to look deeper and like, what am I doing to miss, right? If you have a bad year, kids shouldn't change the way they view you as a coach, right? They have 3 good years, you're awesome. One bad year, you're not. Same thing with parents. Like they start 3 years, they don't once, and now I'm a bad person. I'm done with that, right? I don't coach for them, right? I coach to develop kids, and because that's not the way life is, Zach, right? You do 3 years really good job in the business world, or you're a doctor and you have 3 years of perfect surgeries and you really mess up your fourth year, guess what? You're not going to be a doctor your fifth, and that's life. So that's the way we try to, that probably opened my eyes the most.
Also heard you talk about the constant evolution that you've gone through and how you're still continuing to learn and
Mm,
grow day by day by the people that you come into contact with and how you study and everything. I'd be interested, and this doesn't have to tie in just to that quote unquote book, but some of
mm,
your pillars as a coach, your principles and things like that. How have those evolved now over the last 10 plus years or so? I know that, when you first kind of started to
yeah.
put some of those down, it was even beyond before you took the job at Wake, but now 10 plus years, what have been some of those things that have maybe changed or things that you used to believe as a coach or as a leader that maybe now you don't hold on to as tightly?
It's a tough one because there's not a lot has changed than that, and you don't want to be stubborn because you have to continue to evolve. And I think obviously coaching, you have to evolve if it's structure, principles of play, game model, you have to, because the game is changing, players are coming from different backgrounds. But I still believe right now there's a lack in accountability. I think there's a lack in discipline. I feel like the best players in the country are given more freedom than ever. The best players are given captain's armbands with no leadership ability besides their talent, the way they communicate with each other, right? Because they haven't been held accountable. Most kids that we recruit don't actually go to high school. They go to online school where all they're doing is playing. So they don't know like just like how to deal with older people or younger people and lead by example or verbally. And you see a lot of like non-natural leadership, and I think that's accountability. So that stuff hasn't really changed for me because I do think there's a lack of it. And I'm like, not just because I graduated from the University of Connecticut, but I love listening to Danny Hurley talk about like these kids need it, or Tom Izzo, I think, is the man when you're talking about like, has he probably evolved in the way he's coached basketball? Yes, but he's consistent with the way that he coaches men. With a toughness that's what life prescribes in some ways. And I think I learn a lot, like, I mean, from watching other coaches. I also, the most humbling thing that you could do is mic yourself up, right? I don't, everybody thinks you enjoy it. Like my language changes for sure. And I think that's a good thing. It should be changed all the time. When players goes, coach has a lot today. I'm like, oh, okay. I have a no swear Friday now with a fine jar. One of my players is doing it to me, and I love it, right? Because you have those relationships where guys feel they can hold you accountable too and be open. That's something that wasn't the case years ago. It was like more of like, I can't talk to him. I don't want to bring up anything to him. And I think that's hours and hours and hours of working and peeling back the layers of these guys to have intentional relationships. And I do think that is something, Zach, that now with this very transactional world of college athletics, you have to work harder at. I tell people, you get a young man, it's like, why does a guy care about me? Why is he asking about my family? Why is he encouraging me to call my parents? And then after a while, I was like, holy cow, this guy really cares about me. Now, when someone really cares about you, guess what? I can get more out of him and he can get more out of me. I think some of the best coaches that I've been in contact with is some of my players, right? That make me a better coach or challenge you in different ways. And I think sometimes those players that challenge you, you tend to push to the side. Those players that challenge you, it's like they're reason in your they're in your life as well, right? But I know that's not really maybe the answer you wanted, Zach, in terms of the evolution of coaching, but I think it's harder and harder now to peel back the layers, of players because they're all coming from transactional situations. And what they see on social media is everybody's getting paid and you transfer every year. And I was worried about that, right? A couple of years ago was the first time, right, that a player in the ACC can transfer to the ACC. Back in the day, you'd be like, okay, you're in the best soccer conference in the country, hands down, where are you going to go? Right. And you could be hard. And I was like, oh man, maybe I should be easier on these guys because I may be playing against them next year, right, in my own conference. But I was like, get over that, right? If someone, if it's because you're being hard on them, that's not gonna that doesn't breed success. And so just trying to peel back the layers on guys, and it's sometimes it's extremely thankless, right? It's like I feel like a referee a lot of times, right? You don't the referee just gets no praise. You know what I mean? He just comes and goes. If he's doing a bad job, no one says, "Dang, that was really good referee" at the end of the game. No one says that. That's what I feel like a lot of times. But you just got to keep grinding. And every once in a while, someone says, "Hey, coach, I really appreciate you," and you're like, "Okay, I can do this for another week," and with the same energy.
Those are those moments that, yeah, they fill the tank and they're like, all right, we're like good. I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
And I one thing that I appreciate you describing is you've mentioned challenge now several times, but I think the importance of it being reciprocated. In other words, like how you can create this high challenge environment for your players to help them grow and become the best versions of themselves and also how that can be reciprocated. Like you can look in the mirror and make sure, like, okay, I'm holding myself to that as well. And I'm asking my players and my staff to support me in that regard, to hold me
Mhm.
accountable and things like that. And I think that's extremely powerful when those flow both directions. And
It's not
I'm
flawless, Zach. It's not flawless.
no,
Yeah,
no,
man.
sure.
That sounds like it's flawless. No, it's not. It's a work in progress for sure. And I think the best thing that you can have as a coach is confidence and confidence in your locker room. Like a few years ago, I had a 6-year kid, Jake Swallen, and Jake's been through everything here: injuries, some discipline issues with me. Not with me, just making silly mistakes as every young kid does every once in a while. But the belief was never changed in him. He's gone from starting a season 1-3 to winning an ACC championship to making an NCAA tournament run, been in a Final Four. So it's like, remember Jake when we did this? And he's like, and then he's talking to the guys like when you have those people in your locker room, right, that have been bought in for long periods of time and they're not worried about themselves and they're worried about, the culture of the program, those are the best coaches you got, right? And they take time too, right? Because they have to believe, they have to trust. And in a transactional world, trust is, that is a very fine commodity right now. Like it's hard to find and you got to earn it each and every day.
I appreciate the humility of how this is obviously ebbs and flows and not always going to be flawless.
100%, man.
And also I'm interested when because you're not certainly the first coach that I've heard talk about some of those challenges around, holding players accountable, some of the shifting dynamics and how the landscape has changed for everybody involved. And what are some things though that you and your staff have found help that process and or be to make I don't know if I should say it makes it easier per se, but what are the things that you all have been really intentional with to ensure that you're able to hold players to high standards and to challenge them in those ways?
Yeah, I think, first it's the meticulousness stuff on the field, right? And then them having hopefully, clear understanding of what we're doing and how we're trying to do it. And that it goes back to a little bit of the book, but more of just repetition and talking about it over and over again. But then what we do is, and I say every is an emotional word, but we do most weeks. Um, Most weeks we meet with every player individually, and it takes a lot of time, especially when you're playing Tuesday, Friday. But sitting down, it could be 15 minutes, it can be 30 minutes, it could be an hour based on what's going on in this young man's life. But more of like, how you doing? Especially the freshmen, like, how are you doing? What's going on? How's the transition? How the guy's treating you? And we go over video. It could be training video, it could be game video. And then really trying to be on the same page. And I learned this a while back, started doing this at Denver too, is like when you, at the end of the season, sometimes it's the first time a player hears what they needed to do to be successful. Or a mom and dad calls and say, what do you think? And like, I don't know. I don't think he likes me. I think he likes the older guy or he likes the younger guy. I'm like, in these meetings, no, this is what we see. And I think that's been helpful. But our end of the year meetings are a lot shorter. They don't have to be hours because we're going over a season in review because we do it each and every week. So every Monday we meet as a staff and we go over how we're going to break the players down and why. And my assistant can say, hey, I think you need to take this guy. Or my trainer may say, hey, he's been a little down. I think you need to talk to him. So we divvy up the group that way, go over video, and I think those are, ask questions. And I always end the meeting as, what can we do better for you? What do you need from us? Where you're not just, this is what we need from you. What do you need from us as well? And I think that's been certainly helpful for me, right? And some of those conversations, maybe they don't go exactly the way you thought they were going, but that's when they're being honest, right? I don't need someone to go, and then go out and do something completely different. And believe me, I throw those conversations at them in the next training. I just wasted 30 minutes of my life, talking about this, and this is what you're out there doing. But I believe those have been extremely helpful.
Think this ties into, I mean, we obviously don't necessarily need to have you extrapolate or expand on all the little details and ins and outs of that book, but I think what we're starting to gather here, I think, are some of those core values, some of those core pillars and things like that that shape not only your own leadership philosophy, but really this environment and this culture that you're building and that you're continuing to nurture. And one of the things that I've heard you share on multiple previous kind of conversations is this I don't know if you'd call it a mantra or not, but this idea of like earning the jersey and
Mm-hmm.
what that represents for the program and just kind of, before you maybe define some of it, I'd be interested if you could maybe share just where that it originated from and really what was the underlying significance from it that you saw when you first started it.
Well, I'm not taking credit for any of it because it started. That's something that is a tradition and verbiage and mantras, like you said, like just a culture piece before I was a head coach here. So it started back when I was an assistant. And I don't even remember, like being completely honest. It was just something that we talked about a long time ago. It was earning the jersey, and it's something that, when you come in and, like I said, coming in for somebody in a program that had a lot of history, there's things that you want to continue. And it was something that was talked about so much when I was here as an assistant and guys fighting to be on the field. Like I always tell people all the time, I was like, I want to have competition in every single position, right? So back in the day with his 9.9 scholarships, right, we got 30 guys on a team. And parents want full scholarships. I'm like, okay, I can give out 10 fulls at a school at the time is 75, 80 grand. It's 90 now, right? But we wouldn't have competition in any position, right? And no, your son wouldn't get better, right? If we had one injury, wouldn't be able to compete with somebody. I'm going to get some of that wrong every once in a while. So earning the jersey came where like everybody on the roster was competing to be on the field each and every day, and it's not competing in the classroom, competing in the community, competing on the field with every opportunity, and that's something that continued. I remember there was we still have it. It's like an old sign that says "Earn the Jersey" that I think Coach Vidovich had made, and he put it somewhere, and it's still it's on our equipment shed. Like I mean, it looks bad, but it's still there. Every preseason, I reach back out to an alumni, either two or three that I feel before me, during me, um, have basically defined what a Wake Forest soccer player looks like, and they live their life that way. And I ask him to give a little video, and the players don't know who they are, and we put them in the book, and then they do a video for us when we're presenting about what that meant to them. We just had a Hall of Fame inductee James Riley, and I brought like 9 or 10 of my players to the Hall of Fame, and he was talking about it. So it's like this is years and years, 20, 25, 30 years in the making. It's not just something that goes away. But yeah, we want competition in every position. Guys come to Wake Forest because they want to play with the best. They want to compete against the best. And iron sharpens iron.
Within those environments, not only do they sharpen iron in terms of just the physical skills and abilities, but obviously there is a strong mental component,
Mhm.
right, within that, which you're describing. Outside of just that competitive environment that you and your staff are kind of cultivating there, what have you found to be most helpful in terms of kind of shaping that aspect of it? Because I think this also ties into even that idea of like the challenge and high standards and like kind of the shifting landscape in like how kids are training and the environment they're coming into. So for you all, how are you finding success also in nurturing like the mentality of your players beyond just the competitive in practice kind of environment?
Yeah.
And I know you weren't just saying in practice, but even beyond it as well.
Yeah, I mean, we always say it's like everyone goes, what are you looking for in a player? What are you looking for in a player? I mean, our jobs in terms of identification is not hard. It's well, nowadays a lot of soccer players are signing professional contracts early, so it's like who's going to be a pro, who's not going to be a pro. That's hard, but we're hopefully identifying the best in our opinion, based off our game model of positionally who are the best, right? And then we try to get them. So I say that because now what you're doing is you're bringing in someone that is highly rated, highly talented, probably has an opportunity to be a professional at one stage, down the road, some earlier than others, and they're coming in and now they're playing with maybe someone that has started for 3 years and competing. I think when we start, obviously, there's talk about that in the recruiting process too. I don't lie to kids. We're bringing you in for a reason. Good field players play, right? Like we have reentry. It's not like a professional game, so that's one thing. But number two is the guys that are playing over them, if they're playing over them, came into the same exact situation. So the understanding of okay, you think that guy, and then respecting the position as well, right? And respecting the work rate, respecting the talent, I think is really important. But you got to look at Johnny came as a freshman, he was an All American, so on and so forth, and played limited his first and second year, and now he's a two-time All American. I said like you have to just trust the process. Easier said than done, right? Because nowadays everybody wants instant success. I mean, I looked at two things on Amazon the other day. One comes on Monday, one comes on Thursday. I got the one on Monday, and I don't even know if it's as good, But that's what kids want. So, but I think storytelling. I think guys on the roster, even if they're not playing, just saying, "Hey, you got to trust it." I did. Look where I am. Guys that come back, it's the same thing. But and then mentoring that too, right? Is all these kids want to get better. The easiest way I think to motivate somebody, maybe it's not playing as much as they want to. My meetings are really easy, right? It's the same thing as if I was a teacher. It's like, are you learning? And he goes, yeah. Next, right? What do you go to school for? Well beyond these kids playing soccer, their mom and dad, at some point, most Americans, right, said, I want my kids to go to school, right, college. They didn't know that they were going to be an elite athlete going to Wake Forest. So in their mind, when they were one, if you said you can go to Wake Forest on scholarship or whatever it is, they'd be like, okay, I know I did that with mine, no problems. So you have to remember you're here for a reason, right? Number two is, are you getting better? And they go, yeah. Then what are we talking about? That's why you're here, right? Getting better and instant success, that doesn't always happen. You have players that go to universities that play every minute that don't get better. They get experience, but doesn't mean they're getting better. They're not being held accountable to the little details that one day, if these kids do want to play at the next level, those details are going to make them long-term pros versus getting drafted or a one-year deal. And that's what we take pride in, and that's what we talk about. And we have a lot of pro. I mean, Alistair Johnson's playing in the World Cup. Representing Canada. He's doing Dove commercials now. Oh my gosh, they're awful. But anyway, I use Dove. But it's one of those. He was a kid that came in as a transfer and didn't started one game. I think his first year here as a junior. Transition position, starts every game, first round draft pick, and the rest is history. Would he love to just step on the field and play 90 minutes every game? 100%. but he learned, he got better, right? He was a sponge, great mentality, great athlete, and the rest is history.
Other thread that I wanted to make sure that I asked about is like I think I had heard you describe that not only now you've been in this role since 2015, but the staff that you've had around you has stayed pretty constant as
Yeah.
well during that. And I'd be interested to just when you kind of going back to, and I know there's in a few of these conversations, I'm asking you to kind of go back in time a little bit, but I'm interested for you when it came to building that staff around you what you wanted to complement you,
Hmm.
and now how you all have continued to kind of grow alongside one another as a staff, as a unit
Yeah.
during your time there as well.
Really good question. I get that a lot in the college athletics world too. Is like, how do you have your staff still? Why are your staff still there? I'm like, it ain't the money. You know what I mean? We're college soccer coaches. But I think the first one was easy. Dane Brenner was is with me since I've been here, obviously, but Dane was here 4 years, I think, prior to. When that position was open, I recommended Dane to Jay. I recruited Dane as out of high school when I was an assistant here. He ended up going to South Florida, but I tried to get him to go to Wake. His dad was a Wake Forest football alum, and followed him. Great relationship, great friendship. We always said we worked together. Through the process, Dane was like, "You got to take the job. You got to take the job. You got to take the job." And so that was an easy one, right? Because he believed in me, and I believed in him for a long time. He believes in Wake Forest, and Dane also volunteered at the University of Connecticut for my mentor and my former coach. So we had a lot of similar backgrounds in terms of work and viewing the program not just as a soccer team, but as a program. So community and camp and alumni and discipline. So from a business side of things, which that's what college athletics is, we're pretty on the same page with that stuff. And then I needed someone to balance me, with some experience. And then I actually was looking for head coaches, and that's not easy to do. But Steve Armis is a guy that I've known for a while. When I was here as an assistant ODP, we worked together. He coached a lot of the Wake guys, and like the summer, was in the Raleigh area, head coach at Campbell, and uh, a very good balance for me as a human being, right? Like probably one of the nicest men, you know what I mean, and careful, caring, and he has a really good brain for the game, and he was a big time player, right? And Steve was one of those first guys that left college early, signed a professional contract, and then he knew how difficult it was to go back to college and finish your degree. So the educational piece for some of these guys too, right? I think was important. Um, Having a staff in place for a long time is good, but I challenged them this year in the off season. So this is the first year that we haven't made the NCAA tournament in a long time. And I think when that happens, you have to reevaluate everything as individuals collectively. And I said, being together is great, but it's the same. And so now we have to challenge each other on how we're all going to get better, right? And what else can you bring instead of, oh, this is what we did last year. Well, if we do it the same way this year as we did last year, we're going to have the same results. So what are you going to do? What am I going to do? What are they going to do differently? And that was a complete evaluation. I took a couple of weeks at the end of the season or over the holidays and said, all right, a lot of self-reflection on what we all do. And then we met with all, like, and I'm talking everyone in the support staff. I want you to be the best at what you do in college soccer. And what are you going to do, not to change, but to continue to evolve and get better with the same budget? Because everybody has ideas. Well, if we get this and this, but with the same budget, what are things that we can do better? And that's still a work in progress, right? And it's the same. We go into a spring game. What do we do differently? Like we did the same thing. That's not good enough. So it's the way we, run camps, to the way we're in the community, to the way we do anything we do. We would just want to try to be a little bit better. And I think the guys know that too, right? Because we're in there all the time. We're present all the time. And I think that's important as well.
If I may, what were some of those things that you identified for yourself as you were doing some of those reflections and things? And I know you said that's still ongoing and
It
whatnot, but
is.
like, are there any particular things that when you kind of really started to actually create time and space to be reflective, that maybe there were some insights that you had maybe ignored or things that like caught your attention that you're trying to be intentional with right now?
Yeah, that's a loaded one. It really is. I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing, and I brought it up to players as well, is I feel I lowered expectations. Season wasn't going the way we wanted, and I was finding like false positives, for myself and for them when I believe I lowered the expectations maybe to the group or to an individual, to myself. And it's something that it doesn't matter. I say it all the time, right? When I took this job, I know it. I have a benefit to going to work every day, unlike a program that doesn't have history, right? I walk by Final Four trophies, a national championship trophy, ACC championship trophies. So within the club you're capable of doing it. Now, there could be years that our talent pool isn't as good as maybe others. That's not, I mean, I love my guys. That doesn't mean I don't love them. But my expectations for the way they play, how we compete should never change. I don't think that's fair to them. Now, it may be harder on them, but I don't think it's fair to them, right? Like, or the expectation, hey, this year we just want to make the NCAA tournament. And I do think like throughout the season last year, I was like, we got to make the tournament, got to make the tournament. I wasn't thinking about winning the ACC tournament at that point. And that's where I feel I let them down a little bit, individually and collectively.
For you, when we before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about the human side of leadership and coaching and things that maybe the public or like the outside individuals they may not always have awareness of or give maybe some extend some grace, we'll say,
Yeah.
for the life of being a head coach. What are some parts of the job that maybe people would underestimate in terms of just not just like the physical load of it, but even like the emotional load of being a head coach? Are there certain parts of the job that you find that kind of weigh on you the most?
Yeah. How long is this? No. I
Yeah, yeah.
I tell people, as coaches take head jobs, and we talk about a lot of assistants all want head jobs, and what do you think? Da, 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 da. I'm like, and then after like 6 months, you happy doing it? You sure you like this? The reason I say that is because it's lonely, and it's not for anyone to feel bad for me, and it's not sad. I don't need therapy right now because I say that out loud. But it is lonely because I tell the staff all the time. I said, if you guys are in the locker room or in the office and you're talking about me, I said I invented that. You didn't invent it. It's not new, right? Because as an assistant, you have all the answers with zero accountability in some ways, right? It can be accountability for me, but not global accountability, right? Decision makers like, oh, I don't think we should have done that, or I think we should do this, or like, and in the end, all those decisions, as much as you all talked about it, and I lean on my staff a lot, we communicate a lot. It's very rare that I just make a decision and they have no idea that I did it, what I did it for. We work together. That still decision is on you. And then when you go home, win, lose, draw, right? It's lonely. It really is, and is as close as a relationship you can have with spouse or a partner that you have. They don't understand it either, right? As much as they, oh, well, you're going to win the next one, baby. You know what I mean? It's there's a lot that goes into it, and then you also get the look of the parents. You get the look of the upset kid that doesn't play. You get there's a lot that goes into it, and nowadays there's fundraising, there's alumni engagement in so many different ways. Recruiting is nonstop. We don't have a recruiting calendar, so it just continues. I think what people think is like, I love this if you meet new people, right? So you meet new people and they say, oh, what do you do? Oh, I coach college soccer. What else do you do? What else? I don't have a life. I wish there was something else I did do. So the balancing with your family is very, very difficult, right? I tell my guys all the time, and I think all recruits and kids and families should know this too. I've been using it in camps. I said, what's the difference between my children and my players? And like, oh, you love your kids. No, I love my players too. The biggest difference is I choose my team, right? I don't choose my kids, right? And I say that is because if I'm going to spend more time with someone than my kids, I want to choose really good people, right? So if it's baggage with parents, it's baggage with young men, because I'm around them more than my children. Oh, no, you're not. Yes, I am. Right. And my kids know that too. And I want people to surround myself with that. I'm proud of my kids to be around the way they act around my kids, you know, replicate what they do on and off the field, talk to it. I love it. Right. I love having my guys around it, but there's a lot of sacrifice. There really is, that I don't think people realize, especially in college athletics, because it's not just now there are people, and I'm envious of these people that go to work 4 or 5 hours a day, come home, take breaks, take summers off, and they still manage to win some games. They may have a good team, they have a great program. There's two completely different things, which I don't think people realize as well.
Yeah, and there's also a sustainability component in that
Well, it's
too. Like if you
relationships too,
like,
because you can't do that
yeah,
at practice, right? And
yeah,
why are you doing it if you're not really like living through each and every one of your guys? Like Dylan Borso made his MLS debut. I get a little alert, right? He signed a contract his freshman year last year, playing with the second team. With the first team, comes on in the first half after an injury, and I watched the game like a worried parent. And I had Dylan for less than a year. It's the relationship and how much you pour into these kids. You want to see them be successful. You don't get that by just showing up at practice and going to work and back and forth.
hmm
And not everybody's going to win. So if you're not doing that to get that out of it, what are we doing it for? It's not the money.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's a great way to describe it. I want to kind of bring us to the last couple questions if I can, and being mindful of your time. And again, as we just discussed all these different things on your plate. I don't want to take too
No,
much
that's
of
okay.
it, but um, you mentioned there the folks that have reached out to you, over the years, and I can imagine you've been the source of wisdom and guidance and mentorship from a number of different people. Like, if this is, I hate to just keep throwing loaded questions at you, but I think you've touched on some really impactful things. So as coaches reach out, what are the things that you find yourself emphasizing the most when they reach out for advice and guidance on maybe stepping into that head coaching role? Are there certain things that you find yourself mentioning and emphasizing more than others?
I never really thought of it. I do. I always emphasize staff. I said, who your staff? Do you have an idea who your staff is going to be? Um, because I do think it's important, right? Like when I just said, it's lonely, but it is lonelier if you don't have people that you can trust. And I do that sometimes. Like that's my evaluation is micromanage. Can you just trust them? Because if you trust somebody, you don't micromanage as much, right? Same way with my team. Like I don't trust our overall leadership within the group right now. So I told them I'm the captain. I'll micromanage it until someone steps up and takes ownership and runs it the way I want. And I think that's okay. But I think staff is one thing. I do think is as I went through my journey a little bit in my coaching career is making sure that you find a way to be you, and honestly and not apologetically be you. And I think it's easier to do if you have a good staff too that supports you that way. But I do think that's important as well. Like try to find ways to do it your way. I think the one thing, and then take the goods from the people that you were working with. I remember this like when I'm a coach, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm like, oh, I remember one thing in particular. I said we would do very similar training sessions on particular days. And I thought there was a little bit of monotony in that. And I'm like, well, when I'm a coach, I'm going to switch it up all the time. First off, I'm not smart enough to switch it up every day, right? Like, I mean, I don't have that vault of knowledge. And then I'm like, we just never were good at anything. And then I learned, I'm like, oh, wow, if you do a 77 plus three, that does replicate a lot of the game. But if I'm going to switch it, but now we're really good at doing 77 plus three, which actually is part of our game. Like it looks good in the game. Why don't like instead of every day it's something different, you just never get good at anything. Um, and then the last thing I do emphasize is consistency is the only way you see if something works. Meaning is you start with four in the back and it didn't work one game. That doesn't mean four in the back didn't work, right? It means you just haven't, you haven't seen it through. So I say with meetings, if we're going to meet with players, we're going to do it all the time. We're going to see how it goes, right? If we're going to use new GPS, we just consistency to get through it for a long time. We're going to have a leadership committee. Well, you're going to stop, start, stop. You just don't know what works and what doesn't. And that's something that I think I won't buy a new piece of equipment. I won't buy a new technology if we're not committed to use it the right way for a long period of time. If that makes any sense at all.
Oh, it does. Yeah, I can, as you were describing that, I was reflecting in my own life things that I've seen or observed and even maybe experience where you abandon something maybe too quickly or you write it off or you think, hey, it just
Yep.
doesn't work or whether we see this all the time with with athletes even, and I think this is where there's the challenge of I equate it a lot to like poker, where in theory, like maybe you played the right hand, like you did everything right. It's like you just got
You just
beat, like
lost
for
it.
whatever reason didn't work, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that your system or your process is bad. But again, it's gonna take consistency, it's gonna take some experience and reps and things like that to kind of see that through before you maybe hopefully make a final judgment call.
Stocks too, right? I mean, you buy a stock
Yeah.
and it goes down $3 the next day, and then you're like, I'm selling it. And then, okay, you sell it 4 days later, it's up 80. You know what I mean? Like, oh, and you have all these regrets. I've been using my players like when they come in, I said, what type of stock are you? Right? Like, even as a player, what type of stock are you? Right? We know you have high potential, but you're not performing, right? And you're dropping. Should I sell you? Right? I mean, I don't. But honestly, that's the thing. It's like you just want this consistency of improvement. You know, there's going to be a little bit of loophole, but that's what we want, right? You don't want guys. I don't want guys depreciating on my dime, right? I've been using stocks a lot with our guys.
I'm a huge fan of that. I'll share a very quick story here. I had a player who we were in the outfield one day during batting practice, and we were talking about was really getting into investing and money and things like that. And the conversation had nothing to do with baseball at first, but one of the things that we ended up discussing that I shared with him, I was like, it's amazing that when you actually look at almost like the stock market, or you were to look at a chart and a graph, how often it can be represented by how your performance goes.
Sure.
And so one of the things that we talked about was like if you just judge it today, it can be very volatile, right? You have a bad game, you make an error, something doesn't go your way, right? Like your daily position might all of a sudden be trending down or whatever. But when you zoom out, what you might see is that your trajectory is actually good. And that's the other piece of it too, is I think sometimes like we judge ourselves on our day-to-day position when it's like, well, make sure you also at times zoom out to see is your trajectory on the right path. Now, if it's not, then yes, okay, let's go back to our system, let's explore what adjustments need to be made and so forth. But I think there are some just wonderful parallels, I think, between stocks and investing and just the
100%.
day-to-day
Yeah.
performance. And I love that idea of asking players, like, what's your stock today? Like, you tell me, should I buy? Should I sell? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's a
But
really
I
nice
also say,
eye
like, if I'm
opener.
a big investor, right, would I invest in you? Because they all want to be pros too, and that's basically what a professional club does, right? If it's baseball, if it's it doesn't matter. They're making a large investment in you as a college coach. Right now, with the cost of school at Wake Forest, any amount of money is a large investment. What are we getting on our investment? And I'm not talking about goals. I'm just talking about consistency, showing up every day, making your team better, making the community better, and obviously, yeah, helping you reach your goals. But what type of investment are you? You know, high risk, low reward. I told you players. I had a couple conversations with some wingers this week, and I go, we're starting to get to a point where you're making it difficult on me because we're starting to play guys because of what we think they're capable of doing, but not what they're currently doing. And then as a coach, you could lose your credibility with other players because we believe in somebody and what we feel they're capable of, and we've seen it, but we haven't seen the execution, right? Like Humana, I think is a great stock, but we're not seeing the potential in it because it went down the last week. And I'm like, I'm going to buy it. I'm like, it's going to do really well, and it hasn't. Someone else knows more about it, you know. So it is, but that's the way players are. I've been using that a lot more with them, and nowadays I think a lot more people, the younger people, are dipping and dabbing in it because it's so easy with with your phones and stuff. I think it hits home.
Yeah, well, and then not to mention too some of the landscape differences. Obviously, there's NIL and all that. It's a
Yeah.
perfect time to I think be equating these or finding the parallels between sport, performance, life, and the financial world. I wanna ask this last question. This is a question that I do try to pose to all the guests that come on as kind of a conclusion, Bobby. But um, what is something that you're proud of that maybe you don't always get an excuse to talk about?
Whew, that's loaded, man. I think I mean, anyone that really knows me yeah, like knows this, but I think I'm proud. Well, there's some days I'm not proud of it, but then I think of late I've been more and more proud of it. Is that I do, although we didn't have a great season, I we run as one of the most successful soccer programs in the country, and I try to balance it with loving on my three kids as well. And it comes at a cost to them, right? But it's doing my best. I mean, my daughter lives in Colorado. She goes to college now, and it's weird to say she's my best friend, but she's my confidant in almost everything. We talk every day. And that's been since the day I left. So I left my daughter while she was in Colorado with her mom, which is still one of my really closest friends. And it's without like an incredible co-parent, it doesn't work that way. And But I do think we raised an amazing young woman, and I'm have the opportunity right now to with my 9 and 11-year-old as well. Like trying to have a life outside of it. I've never been successful, but these last couple of years, that's been a main focus of mine. And I feel like I'm getting better at that. I just need to make sure my team is continuing to get better. But more importantly, I don't think people realize, um, yes, we got talented kids, but it's always been a goal of mine to have as diverse of a group as possible at a predominantly middle to upper class institution, like in both University of Denver and here. And I think, and one of the main reasons for that is I think the cultural differences, the learning opportunities. Um, I played college soccer, and it was important for me and what I've learned through other people, not just from the university itself, but just from the culture and being around different types of people, where we have guys from all different walks of life. And it's, you know what I mean, from religions to academic backgrounds to schooling backgrounds, parental, some no parents, some one parent, five parents, right, based off, marital situations, black, white, Hispanic. And that the way they interact with each other, right? I see a kid from the Bronx, interacting with blonde hair, blue eyes from Alabama as if they're brothers and they've been together for 20 years. I take a lot of pride in that. And I take a lot of pride in that. I have a kid over from Senegal, and my kid's praying before dinner with him, and he's Muslim, but he doesn't care. He's just with my kids, and he's just part of the family. To a kid from Japan, and Jose Kojima calls on holidays to talk to my kiddos. That stuff is really, really special to me. And we don't talk about it as much because it's more about like, are we winning games? Are they signing contracts? But the impact that my players have had on my kids, and hopefully my kids on the players, I think is something I take great pride in.
Um, well, I'm just gonna again say one last time, thank you for and to giving you again a lot of acknowledgement just for taking some time to share. You answered a lot of loaded questions, so thank you. I try not to just
Mhm.
pepper you the whole time, but I'm grateful for your responses and the reflections, and just it's been very cool to hear the evolution in your kind of coaching and some of the again expose the human side of the
Mhm.
profession and the job that I think more people can benefit from. I think you mentioned earlier the one of those big challenges being the isolation, and I think conversations like this and peeling back the layers. I know there's many that I've had in previous shows that have reached out have said, man, it was nice to know I'm not alone. Like
Oh
feeling
yeah,
some of this, So I think just you being willing to be vulnerable and share some of these things, it means a great deal. So thank you, Bobby.
yeah, Zach. And I'll say this too. I think all this stuff relates to whatever. If you're looking at college athletics, especially, it doesn't matter what division you're in. I remember one of my best friends coaches Division III men's soccer, and we all have the same exact problems, right? And I say problems like you call them what you want. right? But we all do the same thing. Players want that. It's all the same. So I think it can relate to anybody, whatever level. And it could be a youth club coach that just loves what they do and feel it's thankless right now, but they got to realize it's not as long as you're doing it the right way. In the end, you'll get, I always say, like a WTF every once in a while. Like I get a letter, I thank you so much. And if I listened more, I know I could have been better, but I'm using what I did. I'm like, what the, and I get mad. But you know what I mean? Like if you would have done that when you were here, oh my gosh, you could have been unbelievable. But it is. I think more players should reach out to their youth coaches, or whenever a kid commits to the university, it could be maybe not the club they're at right now. I'm like, just remember to thank so and so, because there's no way that you could be here without it. Because that thanks could actually motivate that guy for another 3 years. You don't know how long. Maybe they're down and out, because I've been there. And, I got at the end of the season, I got a couple of people reached out to me. Is like, that's why you do it. Right. And it motivates you to get back on the horse and keep doing it. So I think we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, thank you for peeling back the curtain in your own life, your own coaching, and taking some time to do so. And hopefully, the rest of the spring season goes well. And I know it's spring break, so hopefully, you get some time
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
recharge a bit with the family. So thanks, Bobby.
Appreciate you, Zach. Thank you.